It is Monday, March 2nd, 2026. And I have to say, if you've looked at a trading screen this morning, or even just, glanced at the gas station sign on your commute, you probably have that sinking feeling that the world just feels a bit heavier today.
Yeah, it really does.
We aren't just dealing with a standard Monday morning news cycle here. We were looking at a fundamental shift, like a real shift in the geometry of the whole geopolitical landscape.
That's the exact word for it right there, geometry.
Right.
Usually we look at the news as a linear list of events. One thing happens, then another thing happens. But what we have on the desk today, and we're looking at this massive stack of intelligence reports, specifically anchored by Manal P's market intelligence, it suggests that the lines are crossing.
The triangulated reality.
Exactly. The report calls it a triangulated reality where war, artificial intelligence, and the hidden mechanics of the economy are all colliding at the exact same time.
And it's a collision that, honestly, most people just were not priced for. So we are going to spend this deep dive taking apart this triangulated reality. We're going to get into why the Strait of Hormuz being closed isn't just a shipping problem, it's an existential crisis for the energy market.
Absolutely.
We're also going to look at why the Pentagon just effectively ended the whole AI safety debate by picking a winner. And we're going to get into some really gritty details about why your car is more expensive and why your gut hurts. Like, literally hurts.
It is a massive agenda today. But we really have to start with the heat, the immediate high-stakes situation in the Middle East.
Let alone dive right into it. So, segment 1, the geopolitical shockwave. The headline that everyone is reading in the Times or the Journal this morning is Operation Epic Fury.
Right.
And the mainstream narrative is that the U.S. and Israel have launched a coordinated strike. The market's reacting, but they're reacting with what I would call hopeful caution.
Hopeful caution is a good way to put it.
Yeah, because Brent Crude is up, sitting around $82, maybe creeping toward $85. The consensus seems to be, okay, another flare-up. We've seen this movie before. It ends in 4 weeks of the ceasefire.
But if you look at the Mehta report, that 4-week narrative seems dangerously naive. This isn't just an airstrike on a radar facility.
No, not at all.
And this is where the multi-INT analysis using multiple intelligence sources, human and signal intelligence, really changes the picture. The mainstream press is reporting strikes on command and control, which is, the sanitized version.
Yeah.
But the recovered intelligence in the report confirms something much darker and much more definitive. This was a decapitation strike. Intelligence confirms that Supreme Leader Khamenei was killed in his office.
Let's stop there for a second, because regime change is a phrase that politicians throw around pretty lightly.
They do.
But killing the actual head of state, the theological and political center of gravity for the entire nation, that creates a vacuum that you can't just fill with a treaty.
Exactly. A decapitation strike is an endgame move. It completely shatters the decision-making loop of the adversary. The administration is currently floating this 4-week timeline to calm the markets. They are selling it as a surgical removal of a problem.
Right.
But history and the intel tells us that when you decapitate a regime like this, you don't get surrender. You get fragmentation. You get chaos.
You get every general, every colonel, and every militia leader basically fighting for their own survival because the central authority is just gone.
Precisely. And that is why the timeline is a total fantasy. We aren't looking at a month of conflict. We are looking at protracted, messy, regional civil war that spills over borders. And the physical manifestation of that chaos is the Strait of Hormuz,
Which is effectively closed. I saw the Financial Times reporting that traffic is dwindling, but that feels like a very polite understatement.
It is a massive understatement. It's effectively a no-go zone right now, and you have to look at the insurance markets to see the reality of it. The number of ships doesn't matter nearly as much as the cost to insure them. War risk insurance premiums have spiked by 50% overnight.
Right, because if I'm a tanker captain, or more accurately, the insurer backing that tanker, I'm not sending $1 billion of crude oil through a narrow channel where the government has just been destroyed and desperate factions are looking for leverage.
You literally cannot underwrite the risk. The math doesn't work. And that brings us to the number that really matters here. $120.
The oil price, that feels really high. We're sitting at 82 right now. Getting to 120 is a nearly 50% jump.
The market is currently pricing in a disruption. Mehta argues we need to price in a structural break. If the strait remains closed because of this chaos, you are taking roughly 20 to 30% of the world's seaborne oil supply offline.
That's huge.
It's unprecedented. There is no swing producer in the world, not Saudi Arabia, not Texas, that can ramp up production fast enough to plug a hole that big. $120 a barrel isn't the worst-case scenario. It's the new mathematical floor.
Now, there is a political dimension here that really caught my eye in the source notes. We are in an election year.
Right.
The administration's entire economic pitch usually revolves around cheap energy. Low gas prices, that's the brand. So, logically, if we were facing a war that spikes gas prices, wouldn't the very first move be to open the tap, release oil from the Strategic Petroleum Reserve to keep the voters happy?
That is the standard playbook. War starts, prices spike. The president announces a massive release from the SPR to cushion the blow. It's almost automatic. It's what presidents have done for decades.
But they aren't doing it.
They aren't even discussing it. And the report calls this silence the tell.
Why? Is it just stubborn?
No, it's game theory. Think about it. If the administration releases oil now, right at the beginning, they are implicitly admitting that this is a massive crisis. They are admitting the 4-week timeline they're selling the public is likely wrong.
Right.
But more importantly, if the intel analysts inside the White House know this conflict is going to drag on for a year, they can't waste the SPR now.
How to hoard it.
They have to save it for the total catastrophe. The moment when the grid actually starts to wobble or the military needs the fuel for extended operations. By refusing to tap the reserve, they are signaling to smart money that they know this is a long-haul structural repricing. They are betting they can weather $4.50 gas better than they can weather running out of strategic reserves 6 months from now.
So the silence is actually the loudest alarm bell we have. It's an admission of severity by omission of action.
It absolutely is. It's the poker player refusing to bet because he knows he needs his chips for the next 10 hands, not just this one.
Okay, so let's translate this to the listener. If we accept the premise, long war, closed straight, 120 oil, no SPR bailout, what is the actual trade here?
The obvious one is energy. The ticker mentioned in the intelligence is XLE. The energy sector has been lagging the tech sector for a long time because everyone assumed we had a permanent supply glut. That glut just evaporated. But the much more interesting trade is the short side.
The airlines.
JETS. That's the ETF for the airline industry. Think about their business model. Their two biggest costs are labor and fuel. Labor is already historically expensive. If jet fuel prices jump 40 or 50%, their margins don't just compress, they vanish entirely.
Right, and unlike a utility company, they can't just instantly pass that cost to the consumer without killing demand.
Exactly. If a ticket to London goes from $800 to $1,500 overnight, people just don't fly. They cancel the vacation. They do a Zoom call instead of a business trip.
So you have a sector that is about to get squeezed on both sides, cost and demand.
It's a brutal calculus. But in a war scenario, the arbitrage between owning the fuel, which is XLE, and shorting the fuel burner, JTTs, is the classic play here.
It's a very sobering start. We have a geopolitical map being redrawn in blood and oil. But while the eyes of the world are on the Strait of Hormuz, there is another war happening inside the Pentagon. A quieter one, but honestly maybe just as consequential. Let's pivot to segment 2, the AI wars.
This is a story that has been developing in the shadows for a while, but the Mehta report suggests the verdict is finally in. For the last 2 years, we've had this AI arms race between the big labs, specifically OpenAI and Anthropic. They were neck and neck on raw capability, but they had very different philosophies.
Right. Anthropic was a safety-first company. They were founded by people who left OpenAI because they thought it was moving way too fast. They talk about constitutional AI, right? Building systems that have hard-coded ethical rules that just can't be broken. They position themselves as the responsible adults in the room.
And that constitutional AI is exactly why they just lost the biggest contract in history.
The Pentagon.
The report confirms that the Pentagon has officially designated Anthropic a supply chain security risk.
Supply chain security risk. That is incredibly harsh language. Usually you reserve that for foreign adversaries like Huawei or deeply compromised software.
Yeah.
Why apply it to an American AI safety company?
Because to a general, safety means something completely different than it does to a Silicon Valley ethicist. To Anthropic, safety means the AI won't help you build a biological weapon or launch a cyber attack. To the Pentagon, safety means we control this tool, and it does what we tell it to do when we tell it to do it.
Right.
Anthropic refused to remove their guardrails for autonomous weapon systems. They essentially said, we won't help you kill people.
And the Pentagon said, then we don't need you.
They said, you are unreliable. In a military context, A tool that refuses an order because of its conscience is a massive liability. It's a supply chain failure. If you are in the middle of a conflict, like the one we just discussed in Iran, you can't have your AI targeting system debating the morality of the strike. So by labeling them a risk, they have effectively blacklisted Anthropic from defense work.
Which clears the runway entirely for OpenAI.
OpenAI realized what the game was. They pivoted hard. They've become the chosen partner for classified operations. The report details how they are building these walled garden instances for the Department of Defense, versions of their models where the public safety filters are stripped out or heavily modified to allow for lethality.
It's a massive cultural shift. We're so used to tech companies fighting the government.
Well,
Remember the Google employees protesting Project Maven years ago? But OpenAI and Microsoft seem to have fully embraced the role of the arsenal of democracy.
it's a winner-take-all dynamic. The U.S. government is the largest customer on Earth. If you lock that down, you have a moat that no startup can ever cross. The investment angle here is pretty clear, according to the source. You have to look at Microsoft. They own the compute infrastructure, and now their partner owns the classified clearance. It's the ultimate defensive moat.
But there is a flip side to this AI boom. We talk about the software and the military contracts, but we rarely talk about the physics of it. The report highlights a risk to the power grid that I honestly hadn't considered before. We know data centers use a ton of power. We worry about running out of electricity. But this is completely different.
This is the reverse load rejection problem. It's terrifying for grid operators because it defies the usual logic of how a blackout happens.
Break that down for us. What actually happened in Virginia?
So, Northern Virginia is Data Center Alley. A huge percentage of the world's internet traffic flows through there. Recently, there was a minor fluctuation on the grid, a slight voltage dip, nothing major. But the safety systems in these massive server farms are incredibly sensitive because they have to protect billions of dollars worth of chips.
So they sensed the dip.
They unplugged all of them simultaneously.
They just dropped off the grid,
Yeah.
just like that.
In a millisecond. Now imagine you are the utility company. You have turbines spinning, generating gigawatts of power to feed this massive beast. Suddenly the beast disappears. The power has nowhere to go. It's like slamming on the brakes of your car while you have the gas pedal floored.
The engine just blows up.
Exactly. The frequency on the grid spikes wildly. It can blow out transformers, trip other safety relays, and cascade into a massive uncontrolled blackout. We usually worry about blackouts caused by too much demand. This is a blackout caused by demand vanishing too fast.
That is a wild vulnerability.
Yeah.
We have built these hyperscalers that are so sensitive, they threaten the core infrastructure just by trying to protect themselves. It feels like the grid is way more fragile than we realized.
It changes the power game completely. It's not just about generation anymore. It's about stability. This is why the report is very bullish on Dominion Energy, ticker D. They're the ones who have to build the hardening. If you want to build a data center now, you can't just plug in. You have to pay Dominion to build the specialized substations and the shock absorbers for the grid. They hold all the leverage now.
It's the old plumbing argument again. In a gold rush, you sell shovels. In an AI rush, you sell the concrete and the massive transformers that keep the lights from going out.
Exactly. The software gets all the headlines, but the physics is where the reliable profit is.
While we are talking about technology, I want to touch on one other corporate story in the stack here. Block, formerly Square, Jack Dorsey's company. They're cutting 40% of their workforce. That is over 4,000 people.
It's an absolute bloodbath.
And the narrative they are spinning to the press is AI efficiency. They claim they can be flatter and faster because the AI makes everyone superhuman.
That is the press release version. We are restructuring for the future.
But the intel calls this transparently cynical.
Because it is.
Well,
Look, AI creates productivity gains, sure, but not overnight, and certainly not enough to replace 40% of your staff in one fell swoop without breaking critical things. The intel suggests this is just brutal cost-cutting to appease Wall Street. Block stock has been struggling. They need to show better margins, so they fire 4,000 people and say AI is doing it so they look like a forward-thinking tech leader instead of a struggling financial firm.
It's the perfect cover story. If you say, I'm firing people because our margins are terrible, the stock goes down. If you say, I'm firing people because we have this amazing new AI workflow, the stock goes up.
Exactly. But the risk, and Mehta really points this out, is execution risk. You get rid of that much institutional knowledge, you destroy morale for the people remaining, and the AI dream turns into a nightmare of broken processes and non-existent customer support. The trade here is to short Block, ticker SQ. The the reality of the cuts will hit the balance sheet way before the productivity of the AI actually kicks in.
Okay, let's move from the high-tech grid to the asphalt. Segment 3, the hidden economy. This part of the report really fascinated me because it connects two things I never would have naturally put together: immigration policy and the sticker price of a Ford F-150.
This is a perfect example of second-order effects. Usually when we talk about inflation, we talk about interest rates and the Fed, but this is about friction in the real physical world. Let's start with the policy. The administration, as part of a broader crackdown, strictly enforced English proficiency rules for commercial driver's licenses.
Which, sounds like a standard Law and Order talking point. Truckers should be able to read the road signs.
On the surface, yes. But the immediate practical impact was that 10,700 immigrant truckers were disqualified overnight. Their licenses were just revoked.
Now, 10,000 drivers might not sound like a huge number in a country of over 300 million people.
In the trucking world, specifically the long-haul over-the-road sector, that is massive. That is a significant chunk of capacity vanishing instantly. These are very often the drivers doing the grueling routes that nobody else wants. When you remove that capacity, shipping rates rise. It's simple supply and demand.
So getting goods from point A to point B just got more expensive across the board.
Correct. Now, overlay that with the auto industry. Automakers are in a really tough spot right now. They have tariffs raising their raw material costs. They have unions demanding much higher wages. They desperately want to raise the price of the cars, but the consumer is totally tapped out. If they raise the MSRP, the big sticker price on the window, people just stop buying.
So they need a way to raise the price without technically raising the price.
Enter the destination charge.
That's the fee at the very bottom of the sticker for delivery. I feel like that used to be a couple $100.
It used to be $500 or $600. The Wall Street Journal is reporting the average is now hitting $1,600, and for some of the big trucks, it's over $2,000.
And their excuse is the trucker shortage.
That provides the air cover. They can point to the new CDL regulations and say, look, shipping is incredibly expensive right now. We have to pass this cost on. But the analysis shows they are raising the fee far more than the actual cost of the shipping. They are using the crisis to bake in permanent profit margin.
It's state-sponsored inflation. The government cuts the labor supply, the real cost goes up a little bit, and the corporations use it as a smokescreen to jack up fees a lot.
And the consumer pays the extra $1,600 thinking it's just inflation or the economy, not realizing it's a specific policy ripple effect that automakers are weaponizing.
So if trucking is broken and expensive, where does the smart money go in logistics?
If you can't move it reliably by road, you move it by rail. The trade here is the Class 1 railroads. Union Pacific, CSX, they are the natural beneficiaries. As trucking becomes more unreliable and expensive due to these labor shocks, the pricing power naturally shifts back to the trains. It's a classic substitution trade.
It's amazing how these things link up. A language test in a local DMV ends up boosting the stock price of a massive railroad company.
That's the entire ecosystem. Nothing ever happens in a vacuum.
Let's keep pulling on these corporate threads. Segment 4, antitrust. The report calls this the second-order oracle. We are seeing a major global crackdown on what I'd call corporate moats.
The regulators have fully woken up. For a decade, tech enabled companies to build these monopolies that were really hard to see. Now, governments are actively tearing them down. The most interesting case right now is the hotels.
Hilton, Marriott, IHG.
Right. The UK's Competition and Markets Authority is investigating them. But they are investigating them for meeting in a smoke-filled room to fix prices like the old days. They are investigating them for using the exact same algorithm.
This is the algorithmic collusion theory. I find this absolutely fascinating.
It is brilliant, legally speaking. They all subscribe to a data service called STR, which is owned by CoStar. They feed all their daily occupancy data into the system, and the system turns around and tells them exactly what to charge for a room. The regulators are arguing that this is just a high-tech version of a cartel. You don't need to agree to fix prices with your competitors if you all just agree to follow the same software that fixes them for you.
That is a huge threat to the core business model of these data aggregation companies.
That's the short play here. CoStar, ticker CSGP. Their entire value proposition is selling this aggregated data. If the courts rule that using this data constitutes illegal collusion, their product becomes radioactive. The big hotels will drop it overnight to avoid fines.
And it's not just hotels. We have Sony and Ticketmaster in the crosshairs, too.
The Sony case is a massive £2 billion class action in the UK. It's attacking the 30% commission they take on the PlayStation Store. If they lose that, the whole walled garden model falls apart. But the one everyone is really watching is Live Nation.
The DOJ versus Ticketmaster.
The trial is starting in Manhattan. The DOJ wants a full breakup. They argue that Live Nation uses its total control of the venues to force artists to use Ticketmaster, which then allows them to charge those insane service fees to the fans.
The Ticketmaster tax. I think every person who's bought a concert ticket in the last 10 years has felt the profound rage of that fee.
Exactly. If the DOJ wins and they actually split the company, that monopoly power dissolves. Competitors like SeatGeek finally get a real shot. Prices could actually come down. But for the stock, Live Nation, it's a binary risk. A breakup is messy and destroys the synergy that makes them so wildly profitable.
It really feels like the era of the walled garden, whether it's the App Store, the hotel pricing algorithm, or the concert venue, is coming to an end. The gates are being forced open.
Or at least the toll booth is being heavily regulated.
Let's move to the money side of things. Segment 5. Financial tremors. We've talked about war and tech, but there is a slow-motion car crash happening in the world of private credit.
Private credit has been the absolute darling of Wall Street for 5 years now. It's a $1 trillion market. And the pitch to investors was incredibly seductive. Get high yields like the stock market, but with no volatility because these assets aren't publicly traded.
We don't mark to market, so the price never goes down. Sounds like actual magic.
It works great until you actually want your money back. We are seeing what the report calls the Blue Owl Canary. Blue Owl is a major player in this space, and they just halted redemptions at one of their non-traded funds. They gated the investors.
Gated is polite finance speak for you can't leave.
The door is locked from the outside. And look at Blackstone's BCRD fund. The data shows they were facing $2.1 billion in redemptions, people asking for their cash back, and only $1.1 billion in new money coming in.
So the bathtub is draining twice as fast as the faucet is filling it.
And that is a total death spiral for an illiquid fund. To pay people back, you have to sell assets. But since these are private loans, you can't just sell them on an exchange in a second like a stock. You have to go find a buyer. Usually that means selling your absolute best assets because they are the only ones easy to sell.
Which leaves the fund holding only the junk.
Exactly. Which makes the remaining investors panic even more, so they try to redeem, which forces even more selling. It's a classic bank run, just happening in slow motion in the shadow banking sector. The illiquidity premium they promised is turning into a liquidity trap.
That is scary. It reminds me a lot of 2008, just wrapped in a different package.
Very similar mechanics.
Speaking of liquidity, but the drinkable kind, let's talk about the coffee wars. This is a fun one. Dutch Bros versus Starbucks.
This is a fascinating generational battle. Starbucks is the incumbent. They built the third place concept. Come in, smell the roasted beans, listen to jazz, drink a hot latte in a mug. It was a cozy, slow experience.
And Dutch Bros.
Dutch Bros is basically a sugar delivery system for Gen Z. They are expanding aggressively into Texas and the Midwest. And the key stat in the report is that 90% of their sales are cold drinks.
90%. So they aren't even really a coffee shop.
No, they're an energy drink station. They sell this thing called the Rebel, which is a highly customizable energy drink. It's fast, it's loud music, it's a drive-through, it's very high energy. Starbucks is terrified of this. They just launched their own energy drink line, but it feels incredibly reactive. They're trying to fight a flank war while simultaneously having a massive identity crisis.
Starbucks is trying to be everything to everyone, while Dutch Bros knows exactly what it is.
And the market always rewards clarity. The trade suggested by the Intel is to short Starbucks. They are going to suffer serious margin compression trying to chase a competitor that is faster, younger, and doesn't have the heavy baggage of maintaining thousands of living room cafes that people aren't even sitting in anymore.
All right, we're in the home stretch now. Segment 6. Frontier Science. We call this the medical detective segment, and today we are connecting the dots between things that seem totally unrelated. Cholesterol, leukemia, and gut pain.
This is easily my favorite part of the whole stack. We have 3 completely different medical papers. Let's look at them separately first and then overlay them. Paper 1 is about IBD inflammatory bowel disease. Scientists just found a very specific set of neurons in the brainstem called neurotensin neurons.
Okay.
These neurons are solely responsible for encoding the pain from the colon. If you silence them, the inflammation in the gut is still there, but the brain simply doesn't feel the pain.
So it's a dedicated pain switch.
Right. Now, paper 2, leukemia. Specifically, a type called CBA mutant AML. Researchers found that these specific cancer cells have a massive metabolic vulnerability. They are hopelessly addicted to making cholesterol. If you block their cholesterol biosynthesis, the cancer cells literally starve and die.
Okay, so we have a gut pain switch in the brain, and we have cholesterol-hungry leukemia cells. Where on earth is the connection?
The connection is the synthesis proposed by our analyst. The hypothesis is this. What if those high-activity pain neurons in the brainstem also have very high metabolic demands? What if they are also addicted to cholesterol to maintain their rapid firing rates?
Whoa. So the idea is to use the leukemia drug, the cholesterol blocker, to treat the gut pain.
Exactly. Instead of using a highly addictive opioid to numb the entire brain, you use a targeted metabolic blocker to starve the specific pain circuit in the brainstem. It's a potential path to a totally new, non-opioid painkiller class that works by attacking the energy source of the neuron itself.
That is brilliant. That is cross-disciplinary thinking at its absolute best.
It really is. And quickly, one more important note on the FDA from the science section. They just laid down the law on gene therapy. A company called Unicare tried to get a Huntington's drug approved using a single-arm trial, meaning they didn't have a placebo group. They just compared the patients receiving the drug to historical data of past patients.
And the FDA just said no.
They slammed the door shut. They said, we don't care if it's a rare disease with high unmet need. We need real science. We need a proper control group. This is a massive signal to the whole biotech sector. The era of fast and loose approvals is over. Expect drug development to get slower and much more expensive, but the data will ultimately be better.
Which is obviously good for patients, but pretty bad for the cash burn rate of these small biotech startups.
Precisely. You can't cut corners anymore.
And there was one more link in there, right? Something about HIV and leukemia.
Yes. This brings it back to the immune system. The theory is that HIV co-infection weakens the immune system in a very specific way that lets those pre-leukemic clones, the ones we talked about starving earlier, it lets them expand.
So if you have HIV, your body stops fighting off the very early stages of leukemia.
That's the working hypothesis. And the opportunity here is to screen HIV patients for leukemia risk much, much earlier. It's a whole new preventative market, again, connecting infectious disease directly with oncology.
We have covered a massive amount of ground today. From the Strait of Hormuz to the neurotensin neurons in your brainstem, let's recap the board. What are the key takeaways for the listener?
Takeaway 1, geopolitics. The decapitation strike in Iran is a total game changer. It ensures a long conflict. The strait is closed. The U.S. is deliberately not releasing the SPR. $120 oil is the structural reality.
Takeaway 2, tech. The Pentagon picked a definitive winner. OpenAI is in, Anthropic is out. And watch the power grid. Data centers unplugging is a brand new systemic risk to our infrastructure.
Takeaway 3, the economy. Inflation is hiding in plain sight. It's in the destination charges on your car, driven by policy decisions that quietly cut the trucking labor force. It's structural, not cyclical.
And finally, science. The future of pain management might lie in understanding the metabolism of neurons, not just their receptors.
That's the map.
I want to leave you with one final thought to mull over. We've talked about a lot of complex systems today. The power grid, the global supply chain, the shadow banking system, the human body.
And they all share one critical trait, fragility.
Exactly. We have optimized absolutely everything for efficiency. We run the electrical grid at maximum capacity. We run our supply chains with just-in-time delivery. We run our credit funds with zero liquidity buffers to maximize yield.
And what we are seeing today, whether it's a minor voltage dip crashing a massive data center or a simple language test crashing the national trucking market, is that when you remove all the slack from a system, it breaks. We have built a world that is incredibly efficient, but incredibly brittle.
We are running on the razor's edge. And today, with the news out of Iran, the wind just picked up.
Indeed it did.
That's it for this deep dive. Check your portfolio, maybe fill up your gas tank today rather than tomorrow, and stay safe out there. We'll see you next time.
Stay curious.